Hello, and welcome again to my very humble channel here. I'm musing on alchemy and understanding where do you begin, how can you begin? Is it real? And I wanted to continue on. The mother, this threefold substance that births all of the things in form on earth, basically. She's the mother of the ingredients. The first new substance born from her is called the ram. And the ram, symbolized by the goat's head, is it's the hieroglyph of the man and the ram. And in this hieroglyph you see a man standing, and then along next to him you see a ram. And that hieroglyph it shows you the matters involved, the substances used for the next stage of the work. This substance is embodied in allegorical stories as the god Pan, because the god Pan is the union of the man and the ram. And the man in alchemy is the iron, and the symbol for iron, the ball with the cross on the top, the arrow, is the symbol for male, and also the symbol for the metal iron, for the substance, the metal. And so when in hieroglyphical language you see a man, if he's not dressed in armor, then he often represents this substance, the iron. And it's also represented by the sword, because the sword is the iron. And so this sword, or this man, and this ram are joined together. And the result of this union is called the cornerstone. And there's a lot of talk about this stone, because it's the first real matter born from the work, and it's the first example of a physical substance in your hand that was birthed as a result of the art. And it grows in layers, like thin layers, like the leaves of a book. And so they describe it as the book of esotericism, the book with the 7 seals. And to unlock this book, you have to understand the language used in the allegory and investigate, well, if the man is the symbol for iron, then the ram is the symbol for what, right? And most commonly you see the ram depicted with just his head inside of a pentagram. And so the symbol of the ram is this 5-pointed star, and so it's most often embodied as the devil, essentially. And so the old days, if somebody smelled sulfur, that was a clear indication that somebody was conjuring demons, that the devil was near. And this association between sulfur and Satan, it's hard to tell which came first, because the allegory of Satan as the lord of the underworld, representing this substance, they overlap each other in such a way that the alchemists used the allegory, and then the church adopted it, and it just kind of like enfolded on itself into this new thing. And so Satan, portrayed by a lake of fire, sulfur fumes all around him, is a pretty common picture of the devil. So this junction, this union of the man and the ram is the first mortification. Because up to that time, you're building up, you're building substance, you're building solution. And the solution at that point is the mother is female. And whenever a thing is female, that means it's the hydrated form of the substance. When the ram is born, this stone, Pan, the result of the union of the ram and the man, it has more names probably than any other substance in the work. It's called the stone that fell from Lucifer's crown. It's called the cornerstone. It's the sword in the stone, because you put the sword into the form of a stone. Literally it's Excalibur, and the blade of Excalibur. The hilt is something different entirely, but this substance it's also called the sky of the wise because of its color. Pretty fascinating. And then it has a twin, a female version, made in the same way, and she's always portrayed with red hair. And so the allegory, it's a dance of love and many allegories. It's pretty interesting how they portray the family of lioness and this dance of love, and the union of those two, the male and the female substance. And this female substance in allegory, if you're following the same allegory as with Pan, it's the water nymphs. And the water nymphs, they guard the pool of the water of life, the spring of life. And so Pan hangs out alongside the pool, playing his pipe, while the water nymphs all dance around in the spring. And so they're an allegory of opposites, male and female version, similar substances, but one has it being represented by nymphs who is like flying and fluttering above the water, so they would be representing a volatile essence inside the substance. And then Pan being half man and half ram, he's representing an earthy side of the substance. And when those two things come together, they give birth to a lion. And that lion is the green lion. The other twins give birth to the red lion. And their story, they're born in a similar fashion from the mother. But the most recent allegory of them would be in Game of Thrones, from the family of the lion, represented by red and gold. Twin, brother and sister, who fall in love. And so you have this union of two mirror-like substances brought together to give birth to this lion. The lion is the universal solvent of all things. The understanding of the allegory, the embodiment of these spirits. Like even today, alcohol is called a spirit because it was distilled and recaptured. So it flew and became a spiritual essence and then was recondensed. And so alcohol is a spirit. But that term is rooted way back. And this term for spirit didn't just apply to alcohol, it applied to any essence that was born through distillation. And so spirits in the ancient days were given names that embodied their characteristics of the substance. And so many substances, many solvents are born in this fashion. And so they would be considered spirits. And in the old days, they would have been given the names of demons because they were born out of sulfur. And then they were sent into the ether and turned into an ethereal substance and recaptured in a form like dew. And the dew of the philosopher, you see in the allegory in the Modus Libre, where there's the sun on the left side and the moon on the right side. And the sun has this ethereal, fiery substance next to it. And the moon has clouds partially encapsulating it. And then in the middle, you see these rays coming down. And in alchemical language, ray, R-E, is a term for a matter, a thing, a substance. And these rays, this RE that you see coming down from the sky and going into the earth, there's two separate kinds of rays traveling together. And they are together, but they're still maintaining their uniqueness as they come down. And then down below you see a freshly plowed field with black soil and little canopies of cloth over the soil collecting the dew from out of the black earth. And the black earth in philosophy is the compost. It's the source of this essence. And so this allegory is also portrayed as the hollow oak, because it's how you make the compost. Any other material would just decay when you try to compost in it. And so, and then in the forefront of the picture, you see a man and a woman standing over a wash barrel, half a barrel, and they're wringing out the dew from the white linen cloth. And as they work together, the dew is collected into the tub. And that's the end of the picture. And then on the next page over, you see a literal depiction of the same process. You see a man standing next to a large globe of glass that's in a furnace. And on the side of that, there's depicted a red lotus-like flower. And then there's a woman, she's holding a vase, and the vase is marked with clouds, just like the clouds by the moon, the ethereal substance by the sun. You see the man on the left side and the woman on the right side. And they are capturing this essence from out of the compost. And the color is indicated by the flower, and the flower is bright red. And so you know that the color of this essence, when it comes out, when it's born, is red. And you see that allegory all through the text. It's usually a woman with red hair, and she is depicted over and over and over and over and over again. This woman with red hair, that you can't tell this story without a woman with red hair showing up. And sometimes she's a prostitute, sometimes she's a witch, and sometimes it varies how she's portrayed, but she's always a woman of power, influence, and the red hair. And oftentimes if they do the full depiction, she'll have a green cloak or a violet cloak. The soul of the world. How is it that when you see a modern day picture of an atom, the most up-to-date picture of an atom that there is today, taken by the most sophisticated equipment we have, that picture is identical to the wheel of the philosopher. And that wheel, that depiction, and I mean, when you look at the picture of the atom, you see in the very center, you see a sphere. And surrounding that sphere, you see a hexagon. And surrounding that hexagon, another hexagon. And then a thick band, and then another hexagon. And then it doubles to the out. When you get to the outside, it has, instead of 6, it has 12. And how did they know these things? Hundreds and hundreds and thousands of years ago. How did they have a completely perfect, accurate depiction of an atom when we're just now, today, getting our first picture of an atom? How is it that these cultures, like, how did they know? Where did they find this out? And you know, for me, I think of our modern science essentially in its infancy and compared to a civilization that existed without an interruption for thousands of years. As a nation, we've only been around for a few hundred years. And it was only a couple hundred years ago that we were horse-drawn carts. There was no real machinery going on. There was and now where we are today, what we've learned in the last 150 years. If you consider that exponential growth of knowledge, how just in the past 100 years, how the build of knowledge has become exponential. We've gone from, we're excited about telephone lines to now everybody has a cell phone in their pocket and they can talk to anyone in the world at any minute. You can access all the information in the world from your pocket device. And imagine, just for a second, if we have that after 100 years, what could a civilization that existed for, say, 10,000 years without interruption, what could they accomplish scientifically and in the exploration of the world around us? And I believe that this science of alchemy, even though they call it a pseudoscience, is actually the end result of that kind of civilization having existed before our concept of existence can even comprehend. This civilization came and went, and some of the knowledge that they accumulated, the peak of their knowledge, was carried forward. And it's managed to survive through all of this time and all of these disasters and all the amount of times that the earth has wiped everybody out and started over again. Somehow this has survived. And it's because I believe it's one of the most important things that exist as far as knowledge go, because it's a understanding of nature, how nature operates, and understanding how nature operates removes the veil of how matter, how substance is born. And the fact that modern science is so just absolutely ready and willing to throw anything to do with ancient alchemy just straight out the door, and if you talk about that pseudoscience, you will be mocked, you will be laughed at. They'll basically just kind of like shrug at you and give you the cold shoulder, like they don't want to waste their time talking to somebody who believes in this crap, when at the same time science says that this is exactly how it happens. But they believe that it's only possible in a supernova, that it's not possible in a chemical solution. But then when you look at the Earth, and when you look at what's happening inside the Earth, in the subjunction zones, this conveyor belt of sea salts being fed into this belly of molten materials, separating everything, and then all these gases and steams and solutions and are born all the way up those fissures. And you see how this process could have been found, because it's mimicking that same exact thing that happens inside the Earth. As the plates fold in on each other, there's this conveyor belt of ancient seafloor that's being fed into the fire. And those salts contain every element that there is. And those elements get separated and dissolved and built upon. It's really an amazing thing. And if you don't understand it, then it's like magic, right? And so alchemists were considered magicians because they could do things that were apparently impossible, right? But only because of a lack of understanding. If you're mimicking what the Earth already does, like, think about the fact that every atom that exists, every single one, every single atom of every single matter, every element had to be born. And it had to be born from something. There had to be a first substance. There had to be a substance from which matter grows out of, right? And that's what they figured out. The ancient, whoever they were, however long ago, they figured out what that substance was. And they figured out how it was used, because energy is never lost. It just gets moved from one place to another. Like a plant grows out of the ground, it uses that energy to build itself and to hold itself into structure and give itself form. And then the storms come, the cold come, the plant, its structure breaks down from the cold. The energy that was once trapped in the plant goes into the water goes into the ground. Something else grows out using that very same essence that made the plant before grow and produce fruit. Has now been transferred to a new plant that'll grow and produce fruit again. Or it could have been transferred into a gas. It could have been turned into, to oxygen. It could have been, there's a million things that the energy could have become, but it's never lost. This substance surrounds us, and we're built out of it. It's everywhere, all around us, all the time. And everything contains that substance. And the art of capturing it and transferring it from one thing to another, understanding the laws of nature and how nature can take one substance, break it down to its core particle, and use it as a building block to build a new substance. So one atom is born from another atom, and the atom has within it multiple atoms encapsulated in and around each other like the rings of a tree. And so a good example is the decay in a power plant. It starts out as one thing, but then they trigger a reaction, and the outermost parts of energy become loose, and they are separated and set free, and they burn off, essentially. And what's left behind is the more stable core substance that was used as the building block to build that other substance. And so when the reaction is done, they're left with the original substance again. It's just simply lost its energy that was stuck to it through additional processes and cycles in the earth. And so every element is born out of other elements. And they it's the Mandelbrot set, like pixels. If you look at it from a distance, you see a shape, but as you zoom in, you see thousands of that same shape, and then you zoom in on that and you see that same shape again, and then you zoom in on that and see thousands of that shape, and then you zoom in, and no matter how deep you look into it, you keep seeing mirror images of the same thing happening over and over and over again, exponentially multiplying and dividing as they multiply. And so when you're working with one thing and you're building onto it to make another, the process of capturing, transferring, impregnating, and binding, fixing into a specific shape. And the shape is going to be determined by temperatures and pressures or lack thereof. And from the same substance, all matter is born, ultimately. But as they say, nature doesn't work in leaps, but in stages. And so it takes multiple cycles and processes for something to go ultimately through around to becoming something much further down the line. In the periodic table, if you move forward on the same line down the table, each move forward is capturing a neutron. But if you move backwards and across, you're into what they call beta decay. And so what is a neutron? How do you capture a neutron, right? The laws laws of the Mandelbrot set say that a thing at the microscopic scale has the same design at the macroscopic scale. And so nature doesn't build an atom the size of an atom. It builds an atom like the cell of an egg. A large egg, like an ostrich egg. And then it works on that one single cell to design it and organize it to be the kind of atom that it's going to be leaning towards. But the single cell initially doesn't have a direction. It hasn't been impregnated by a seed, and the seed determines whether the cell becomes male or female, or a chicken or a goat. and so initially you build the egg, the philosopher's egg, the single cell. And then that single cell, depending on your intention and your direction, what path you will be taking, gets augmented by temperatures and pressures. And then once you have a stable nucleus, then it gets impregnated. And when it gets impregnated, just like a cell in an egg, when the sperm breaks through that membrane and penetrates the egg, the cell starts to divide. It causes a chain reaction where the cell, mitosis, it divides, making two equal parts identical to the one that just divided. And then those parts divide, and it becomes exponential. Pretty soon, from that one cell, you have billions and billions of cells. And within a couple months, you have a baby chicken. Well, the laws of nature cross all the boundaries of every science. And atoms of metal are born in the same way that cells of creatures are born. It's the same process. And science is happy to accept mitosis in biology, because you can watch it happening. You can stick a little scope in there and watch the egg develop, or you put the egg in a petri dish and watch it develop. But they haven't witnessed it happen with the minerals, and so it's harder for them to believe that that's even physically possible. And the science of nature says that you can take a thing, a small amount of a thing, like yeast, and give that yeast the appropriate environment and food, and that yeast will multiply itself indefinitely. You could take a culture of yeast and use it to make a new batch of bread every week for 1,000 years and keep that yeast alive. That same culture of yeast has continued to be multiplied by the billions over and over and over and over again. And the mineral world is exactly the same way. In the volcano, in the belly of the earth, yeast is born, a yeast of mineral, and it's like a bacterial yeast. And it has the ability to multiply itself and be like a catalyst, a transferring agent of energy, to transfer that energy from one place to another. Long rabbit trail. Coming back to practical application, because you can talk about it all day, but if you don't give somebody something that's actually worthwhile, then think about the sword and the stone, the man and the ram. If the iron and the ram come together to create a stone, what could that stone be? If you're talking about a chemical compound that results in a dry, crystal-like product. And in contemplating that, read everything you can find. I always recommend Fulcanelli first. If you're starting off, Fulcanelli is going to be the clearest, most direct route to understanding the language of the birds. And he talks about this stone over and over and over. He talks more about this stone than any other because it's the first step of the work, the first step to understanding where you're actually going to be going with this work and what it means. And so, Mystery of the Cathedrals by Fulcanelli. I found the audiobook and I listened to it on repeat for days and weeks and months, which turned into years. And I've listened to it countless times, and I still listen to it again to refresh myself and pick out key points of clarification when I'm working. I just can't stress it enough. If you're really serious about understanding the work, you can't just read the book once or twice. You have to literally do an alchemical process on the book itself. Break it down, separate it, put the proper things together in groups, and look at them so that you can clearly understand how these riddles relate to that plate. And where in the process are you? Are you making the ingredients, or are you making the stone? Don't confuse the two when you're interpreting the allegories, because you get lost in the labyrinth. It's important to take things in order. Start with the first one, embody it, meditate on it, do whatever you got to do to bring yourself to a place of understanding. And think about it as if I lived 10,000 years ago and didn't have any of the terminology that we have now for a chemistry project. How would I describe solvents and acids and, reactions between bases and acids? How would those things be described? And when you're reading the allegories, listen to the common threads. He'll give you 25 different riddles and 50 different names and a dozen different examples, but they will all have a common thread. And when you start knitting those together with that thread, you start to get a picture of what he's trying to tell you and everything is embodied by its characteristics, by its behavior, by its color is the main thing. The first stone could be any color, but if you did it right, it's blue. I hope you guys are enjoying this. I know I'm not the most exciting person, seeing me ramble here in the light of my candle in my workshop. But I enjoy talking about these things, and I feel like maybe there's some people out there that might enjoy it too. So